So I am Luciana Castellina. I was born in a very interesting time because it allowed me to be 14 when the war, the Second World War, was coming to an end. So I was able to, to be a testimony of what happened during the last period of the war and then the post-war, which was a wonderful time because we were sure we were going to change the world. It didn't happen really. I mean, it was changed, but not in the best direction, let's say. And so this is me. I'm very old now. I'm nearly 97. And but I bring tendency to break my head or my legs, but I'm going around. I was very ashamed to be a woman. I thought because women were women at the time, something less, something less than a man, less intelligent, less physically ready to fight, everything less. So I was ashamed, and I tried desperately to, just to make things so that nobody could discover that I was a woman. Io ho cominciato così il mio femminismo, con la vergogna di essere una donna, una cosa che mi faceva orrore, bisognava nasconderla. And so then I finally, little by little, discovered feminism, which was typical of a different generation, mine, not mine. I might say that I was told the first idea about feminism was given to me by my daughter. And you know that children very often are telling mother and father how the world is, which they do not understand. It's not it's the opposite. It's not father and mother who tell the children how the world is, but the opposite. And she just made me a very stupid question and said, why you always go out for dinner, but you always go out for dinner with men and never do out of dinner with women? And I thought about it, and I discovered that it was absolutely true. For no reason, I was just always going only with men and women, because women were less. So this was the beginning for me for feminism. I would tell you that when I arrived in the European Parliament for the first time, we organized a meeting with all the women of all the parties and of all the countries, which were members for the first time of the European Parliament. And we made a meeting in order to inform each other what were the rules for women in each of one of our countries. And I discovered that Italy, which used to be considered as a very backward country, we had the best legislation all over Europe. Io ho scoperto lì, solo nel 79, che l'Italia aveva la legislazione più avanzata di tutta Europa, i famosi paesi socialdemocratici. It was not true. So, and among this, we had in 1950 a law, which was a law, Teresa Noce was a communist revolutionary woman, who she worked and made it possible to let the parliament recognize the right for women who work to have 6 months without work but paid in order to have a child, and 3 months for those who didn't do manual work. And this is still in Europe not applied, not to speak about America. So, and this is the reason, because in Italy we had the trade union movement, which was not factory and men and metal workers and so on, but was more on the ground, Camere di Lavoro. So it was horizontal, not factory. And this is the reason why they could discover that women existed. because otherwise, it was just a factory, and then you met mainly men. And in Italy, this was instead because they were working on the ground more than in the factories, which were less than in any other country, because the industrialization of Italy arrived later, and so that you could identify the existence of women. And he had a very advanced legislation. Even the equal salary for women and men, we had this law very early, and the British women did not yet had it 5 years ago. And they asked, they made a campaign towards the Justice Organization of the European Union to denounce that they didn't have this, and they took the Italian law as an example. And this was all, let's say, the results of the fight of UDI, this very traditional but very advanced in the same time organization of women. But of course, when feminism arrived, the horizontal and the whole, many implications of being a woman, were somehow clear, became clear. And this, I agree very much with Simone de Beauvoir, who says, to understand what it means to be a woman is a job. It takes all your life. Women are not the same thing as men, but they are different. And the point is that the society has not recognized as a value this difference, and the job is not to become like a man. It's not such a wonderful target to become a man, but instead is to make the society recognize that the women are different, but that it's the society who doesn't recognize it, and this is the fight. Even our best laws, even our constitution is a very good constitution, but nevertheless, it's always refer to a neutral identity, no? And they never see that the right is for the man or for the woman. Which is the same thing that Karl Marx said beforehand, that the same rule is different if it applies to the boss or the worker. And this is true also for the women. And that they have been put in the cage of a neutral identity, which is not their own, because it's all designed upon the identity of men. I call it the lie of neutral. Neutral children don't come to life, they don't exist in nature. So the fact to have discovered the neutrality of the human identity, it's a lie. It can be only a lie because it's not true. I think that the best thing which was made by feminism in Italy, but a little bit all over, is this group of self-consciousness to retire and to speak alone, and which meant that they had to leave the men organization because they didn't allow you to be among women and speaking, because it was an inquiry. È stata una grande inchiesta ai gruppi di autocoscienza su se stessi, sulle donne. They had to understand what it meant to be a woman, and women didn't know it. We only have the vote when the war was finished, and so this was 1946, and of course it was, I always remember how emotional it was for women to go and vote and so on. But old communist men were frightened by this, because they said, women go to the priests in church, and the priest will tell them to vote for the Christian Democratic Party. So we will lose a lot of votes because of this. It would be much better if they wouldn't give the right to vote to the women. And there was an intervention of Togliatti, who's the secretary of the party, who said, you are idiots. You think that for a few votes less, we should renounce to the political influence in which the engagement, the commitment of women in politics will give to us. And then it was, UDI was something which was built by the communists. It was not a branch of the party, but it was, of course, made most well for this. So the push, let's say, to women, to feminism had been already open, even if then, there was, but it's still a discussion today. Can women have the same party as men, or it would be compulsory that each one has its own party, political party? And this is the discussion which is very open to women. And Rosanna, who was one of the leaders of the manifesto, when she died, we find on the computer a book she was writing precisely on this issue. Can women have the same party as men or not? And she says women are right to have a large part of their thinking experience as women, but there is a link which is similar, because the feminist revolution is something which is going to change the world in a way which is an anti-capitalistic society, and this is the same goal that the political parties of the working movement have, which means that there is something on which we can fight together. So there should be, of course, a large part of political activity of women, which is just for women, but to belong to the same political party has got a significance and so on. And so the book, we published it later. It's exactly two movements, one party, with a point of interrogation. They killed 84 women this year, in 84, it's a lot. 84 donne sono state ammazzate in questo anno, 126. I always say that this is a sign that the women revolution is advancing, because you cannot think that you can make a revolution without blood. As Lenin said, revolution is not a pranzo di gala, it's not. And you see, it's interesting, because all the women who are killed are not weak women, are those who rebel, those who have decided they want to do what they wanted, they want to leave their companion, that they will make what they have chosen to make, and so on. So it's a sign that the revolution goes on. But of course, it's a bit hard. I must say that I think that it is true that the civil society has changed in different ways, but also that there are more and more politics, positive politics in the civil society. What is lacking is that the state is totally separated, and institutions even don't know. The institutions represent 25% of Italy, and the rest they ignore it. And I am trying to build what I say the Soviet di quartiere. That when they speak about young men or young women, I say youth, they don't understand anything, because they think, for instance, I can listen to the word astensione, which is abstention for vote. Young people don't vote, and this means that they are not interested in politics. I say they don't vote because they have no interest in following the discussion in Parliament, and they are right, because it's such a stupid discussion that why should they vote? There is no reason, They discuss of nothing, even now. Then there is 70% of the young people who under 35 who just don't go to vote. But because it doesn't make the Parliament do not decide anything more. It's decided also all in the global market, by big groups and so on. And this is the reason why there is the politics made by the right and the left is more and more similar, except on issues of police. On police, the right that's their point, but it's not enough. And young people are politicized very much, but they make politics in a different way. They try to change civil societies more politicized, more than it used to be, where there are wonderful experiences, wonderful.